In this video we'll show you how to use the SolidWorks Toolbox Add-in. The Toolbox provides a library of fasteners such as nuts, bolts, washers, pins, keys, bearings, gears and so on that you can drag in from the design library into your model. If Toolbox is not installed, the easiest way to install it is to go over and click here on the design library, click on Toolbox and click Add-in now. So within Toolbox then you have a library of all the various standards, and here we have the German standard, which is DIN, and BSI, British Standard, and ISO and so on. And within each of these standard folders you have subfolders which contain all the various categories of fasteners that you'll want to use in your projects. To unload SolidWorks Toolbox, you can click on Add-ins and go down and uncheck this box here, and that will uninstall the SolidWorks Toolbox library. If you'd like to have it installed all the time, you can tick this box here, which is in the startup column. You can also load and unload SolidWorks Toolbox from the SolidWorks Add-ins tab here on the Command Manager. There's one setting that you should check before you start to use Toolbox on your projects. If you go to System Options and go to Hole Wizard Toolbox, you should make sure that this box is unticked. Unticking this box prevents SolidWorks from selecting the default Toolbox Parts instead of your saved Toolbox Parts, which should be in your project folder. So always make sure that this box here is unticked. Default Toolbox Parts would be in the SolidWorks data folder, and we don't want to use those in your projects. You want to use your own saved Toolbox Parts. We'll look at this now in SolidWorks. So here in SolidWorks I have a belt tensioner, and it's got an M24 spindle here, and I need to add an M24 washer and an M24 nut to this end here of our model. So let's see how we can do this. Now if I click on the isometric view, it's facing away from me, so I'll quickly create a new isometric view looking in here from the southeast. So if you press the space bar, you get this cube. So if I click here on this face here, it'll give me an isometric view looking in from that direction. Now if I want to save that, press the space bar again, and over here in the orientation dialog box, click New View, and I'll call it ISO Southeast, and that's now saved with my model. I'll use this view now so that you can see more clearly when I add the washer and the nut. Let's go to the design library, click on Toolbox. It's not currently added in, so click Add in now. So when you add in Toolbox, you can click on the flyout, so you've got all your various standards in this window here. I'm going to select BSI. So the first fastener I want to bring in here is an M24 washer. So let's expand out the washers folder. It's a plain washer. I'll select the plain washers folder, and down here in the bottom window we have various washers. Now I'm just going to pick, really doesn't matter too much which one you pick, but just pick a normal washer here. So I'll take this washer here. Now as I drop it onto the spindle there, you'll see that it changed size. It may be possible to mate it to the face there, but that can prove a little bit tricky. So what I'll do is I'll mate it to the spindle there by just dropping it. So I release my left mouse button, and SolidWorks has picked up the size that you need, which in this case is M24. But if you want to change it, click on the drop down there and we can change it. So M24, so it has detected the size of my spindle here. Over here on the left you've got the configure component properties, and you can see here for an M24 the inside diameter is 25, the outside diameter and thickness and so on. So I'll just click OK on that. We'll go with the defaults on that. Now SolidWorks wants to bring in more of these similar washers. We don't need that, so hit the X here to cancel out. Now let's click on our washer here. So when you do that, you'll see that it's got a concentric mate. I'm using the breadcrumbs here. You can also go over here, and underneath the washer you can see what mates. So it's concentric with the spindle there at the moment. So clicking on it, we can see it's concentric. Now we need to make the inside face coincident with this face here. So I'll manually add that mate. So if I click this face here, SolidWorks will bring up this pop-up, and if I select mate here, lots of ways to do this. It makes the component that you selected transparent. I'll click on this face here of the washer, and we want to make those coincident, so I'll click OK on that, and that adds that mate there. So now the washer has two mates, concentric and coincident. Let's bring in the M24 nut. So I'll go back to my design library. I'm using BSI, so we'll select nuts, hexagonal nuts, and I'll use this nut here, hex nut grade C BSEN 24034. So I'll take this nut. So I'm going to drop it there onto the face of the spindle, and I'm looking for the little plus symbol there on the cursor, and that should give you two mates. It should be concentric and coincident, but if you don't manage to capture the coincident mate, don't worry, you can always add it in manually. So I'll drop it there. Once again, SolidWorks has detected that the size I need is an M24. Over here on the properties of the nut, you might change the thread display to cosmetic. So this will show you it's an M24 cosmetic thread, and click OK. SolidWorks wants to bring in more instances of this nut. We don't need any in this case, so I'll click cancel. If I click on the nut here, you'll see that we indeed have two mates. So it's concentric with the washer, and it's coincident also with the face of the washer there. But when dropping it, if you didn't manage to get these mates correctly, you can always right click on them there and delete them, or you can always go in and edit the mates. So always select faces when you're mating, and when you drag in your components from Toolbox library, they will always mate faces for you. If you look here now at your design tray, there's our washer, and this is our hexagonal nut. Now these components are not yours fully yet. They appear here in our model, but these are referencing the SolidWorks design library. If you click on any of your own components and you go component properties, it will tell you what folder. So it's in the belt tensioner project folder, and that's where you want your toolbox parts to be as well. For each instance of a toolbox part, and we only have one washer and one nut here, so I'll have to do this for each of these components. So if I were to click on that component there and I go component properties, this washer is currently stored in this SolidWorks data folder, and we need to change that. So to do that, right click on the washer and go open part. SolidWorks will tell you that you're about to make changes to the following read-only documents. Click OK on that. So we open the washer in its own window. If you go to Configuration Manager, you will see the active configuration, which is M24. Right click on that and go to Properties. And down here we can control how this will appear in our bill of materials. So I want to use the document name. So I'm going to select document name and click OK. Now let's save this. This is currently read-only. So I'll have to go Save As. SolidWorks brings up this dialog box. This file is being referenced by other open documents. We know that. Select Save As. And now you want to save this into your project folder. So browse to your project folder. So in the project folder, you will see all your parts that you've saved so far. So into that folder, we're going to save this and give it a new name. We'll call it M24 plain washer. If you want to use caps, you can. Click Save. Now up here, we can see the name of our part, and it's in our belt tensioner project folder. Let's close this. So back in your assembly here, you can see that the name has changed here on your assembly tree, and if you go component properties, it's now properly in your project folder. Let's do the same for the nut. So once again, click the part, open it, click OK, go to the Configuration Manager, right click on the active configuration, select Properties, and once again select Document Name. So it's going to use the name that we give it when we save it in our bill of materials if you create a drawing of this. Click OK. Now go Save As, click Save As again, go to your project folder. So in your project folder you see the washer that we saved the last time. So let's call this M24 hex nut. Click Save. Once again, this updates, and if you hover over there, you will see the folder will pop up there like that, just as a check for you. Close the part, and now if you go back here and look at your design tree, the nut and the washer are now yours. They're in your project folder. If you click and check component properties, you'll see that the hexagonal nut is now in the belt tensioner project. So that's how you use the SolidWorks Toolbox to add fasteners to your projects. One last thing, if you click on options here, Hole Wizard and Toolbox, make sure that that box is unticked as we showed at the start of the video. That way SolidWorks will not override your toolbox parts that you've saved here. So that's it. That's all you need to know how to use Toolbox properly in any project or exam that you might be doing. Thanks for watching.